Hi everyone. So today we're going to learn a tutorial about the element of art shape. And we have a worksheet here right in front of us where we're going to learn how to create geometric and organic shapes in Photoshop. So I'm going to start with our worksheet and enlarge it. The keyboard shortcut, as we remember from class, to enlarge is pressing Control and the plus key on your keyboard. I'm going to zoom into the geometric shapes to start. And once you zoom in, you can also move your page around. Like if you wanted to, see a particular part of the page and center it, you can actually use these sliding bars. So just follow my mouse, follow the cursor. And you can see there's a sliding bar that is vertical, which will allow you to move your page up and down. And then we have a horizontal sliding bar, which will allow you to move your page left to right. So starting with the geometric shapes, I'm going to zoom in even more right to our circle to start right here. And let's talk about creating shapes. All right, so for starters, the Shapes tool can be found in your tool panel, which is this whole strip of tools on the left-hand side. And right here, it's just a rectangle. This is the default setting for our shapes. All of the shapes that are in the Shape tool are automatically vector shapes, which means that they maintain their resolution and clarity, no matter how big you make them, no matter how small you make them. If you resize them, it doesn't matter. You can make your shapes the size of a billboard and it will look great. All right, so that being said, obviously we want to start with our circle. And we cannot make a circle with a rectangle tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the hidden tools, and you can see that there's a hidden tool because there's a tiny little triangle right at the bottom right of the Shapes tool. And when you click and drag, you'll see these are other tool options, other shape tools. So there's a rectangle shape tool, there's a rounded rectangle, an ellipse tool, which is meant for circles and ovals, a polygon tool, which we'll get into a little later on for, anything that's like three-sided or more, and a line tool, and then a custom shape tool. But for now, to create our circle, we're going to select the ellipse tool. So I just clicked on the ellipse tool, and I want to start with a fun color to make my circle. So I'm going to go to my color picker, which is the box that is found right at the bottom of our tool panel, and you double click, and there we go. There's our color picker. We can choose any color that we'd like. You'll notice that there's a little dot wherever you select on the screen. This over here actually is a little sample of what your color should look like. We have a whole entire rainbow right here. You can select any color that you want. I think I'm just going to start with red for my circle. And once I'm happy with my selection, I click OK. All right, so now I'm going to create a circle. And normally, now that we're on the ellipse setting, if you just click and drag, you can create a circle. However, you might have noticed that as I'm clicking and dragging, a little pop-up box appeared, and it has a W and an H. W stands for width, H stands for height. And you'll notice, even though I have a pretty good eye, being an artist, my circle is not completely even. You'll notice like the width says 1.48 centimeters, the height says 1.46. That's not the same. And we know that circles really have a perfect diameter all around. So I'm going to just let go of that circle. And it looks pretty good, but I know that it's not perfect. So I'm going to undo that circle by pressing Control Z, that's undo. But instead this time, when I go to create my circle, I'm going to press the Shift key, hold down the Shift key on my keyboard, because Shift will stabilize my circle and make it even all around. So look at the difference. I'm pressing Shift, Look at the width and the height. You'll notice that those numbers are identical now, which means the width and the height all around is exactly the same. That's what we want. Okay, that looks like a good size. Okay, so now that I just created my circle, you will notice that on the right-hand side in the layers palette, a new layer just appeared. And we always want to rename our layers. That's how we stay organized in Photoshop. So as soon as you create a new layer, rename it. Naturally, I'm going to call this new layer Circle. Okay, now as I'm working on this, I also want to make sure that I'm saving my document. So as I go, I'm going to first go to File. I'm going to Save As. And normally, I would save this in one of my Studio and Media folders, but just for this demonstration, I'm just going to save it to my desktop for now. Okay, there we go. And it's saved as a Photoshop document because there's several layers that's going to be in here, and we're going to work on this. Okay, there we go. All right, so back to the circle. So I know that my circle is nice and round and even and equal. However, my goal for this worksheet is to fit my circle within the dotted line. So how do I do that? I go to my Move tool. The Move tool is at the top of the tool panel. I click my Move tool, and then suddenly you'll notice, look at the cursor, it changed. It matches the icon of the Move tool. And suddenly I'm able to move my circle all around. So you'll notice that it said that it couldn't move it at first because the layer wasn't selected. So if you follow my cursor, look at the layers panel, you'll notice you can click on the individual layers, make sure that your circle layer is selected before you move it. And suddenly I'm able to move my circle. And the size was quite good that I created. So let's just pretend you're clicking and dragging your circle, and it's kind of hard to get it exact to where you want it to be. You can also press the arrow keys, see, on your keyboard, and it's just slightly nudge them right, left, up, or down. And you can really fit it nicely. I can still see that there's a little tiny bit of space here in my circle that I'd like to fill. So I'm going to press Control T, and that actually opens up a resize box. Now, normally I could just click and drag and resize a circle. I could make it bigger, I could make it smaller, but you'll notice the width and height gets uneven again. So I'm going to press Control Z to undo that. And this time I'm going to remember to hold the keyboard shortcut to keep my shape even and equal, which is the Shift key. Hold down the Shift key, and then I can click and drag this to be a little bit bigger. There we go, and match it right over my dotted lines. Once I'm happy with it, to get rid of this resizing box, all I do is press Enter on the keyboard, and I'm good to go. Okay, so now I'm going to also press Save again. The keyboard shortcut is Control S. We want to always, always, always make sure that we're saving after every step that we do so we don't lose any of our hard work. All right, the next shape down the pipeline is our oval shape. So I'm going to change colors for each shape because I want it to look pretty and exciting. So let's go to our color picker. I'm going to pick like a teal, a nice bright teal for my oval. So we have to go back to our shape tool. I changed it to the ellipse earlier. And once again, an ellipse is used to make circles or ovals. So in this case, I can make my oval using the ellipse tool, but the difference is I don't have to hold down my Shift key because an ellipse is not perfect all around. It's not perfectly even. So I'm just clicking and dragging. That's pretty good. Okay, and you'll notice that even though I selected this sort of teal color before, it didn't fill in properly. So there's a really easy way to fix that. So if you follow me to the Tools panel, to the Layers panel, see here is Layers. Here's an ellipse layer. And you'll notice each layer has a little icon. I'm going to double click the icon and my color picker window pops up. And I could just pick any other random color in the color picker right now, but I want the color that I previously selected. So watch what happens when I slide my mouse off of that window. It suddenly turns into the eyedropper tool or the medicine dropper tool. And this tool is really special because it actually will select individual pixels. And in this case, it will select the previous color that I had in my color picker, my little swatch right here. And it goes straight to that color. I'm happy with that. I click OK. Now you'll notice that the edge of this shape has a little bit of space there. I want to fix that. I'm going to press Control T. And I'm going to just drag my shape out the tiniest bit so that it matches and it stays in the lines. And I'm happy with that. And I press Enter. I'm going to change the name of this layer to Oval. And then I'm going to click Control S on my keyboard to save my work. All right, the next shape we have down the line is our triangle. First, I'm going to switch colors. I'll choose something fun and interesting like this lime green. And we have to change our tool because we can't make a triangle with the ellipse tool. Triangles we're going to create with the polygon tool. So I'll click on the polygon tool. And you'll notice if you follow my cursor, right up here, whenever you click on a new tool, it always pops up at the top area here, and you'll see that it also showcases different settings that go along with that tool. So I clicked on the polygon tool, and you'll notice there's a setting right over here. It says sides. So in this box, you can decide how many sides do I want my shape to have. So naturally, we know a triangle has 3 sides. So we'll change that number to 3. And watch what happens when I go to create my triangle. I'm going to click and drag, and suddenly it turned into a triangle. So the interesting thing is when I click and drag this triangle, it rotates, you can move it, but we want it to be nice and straight. So pay attention to that line, that bottom line, and you'll see it almost looks like steps when it's angled and it's not straight, but as it straightens out, it looks like a beautiful straight line on the bottom. So once it's like that, let go. And I'm going to rename this layer triangle. And then I obviously have to move my triangle into the dotted area. I'm going to select my move tool. See, it's saying could not use the move tool because the layer is not selected. See, it caught me. I have to go back to my layers, make sure I select triangle, and now my move tool is also selected and the correct triangle layer is selected, so now I should be able to move it. I'm going to line it up as perfectly as I can, the point of the triangle to the point of the outline triangle, and my keyboard shortcut for resizing is Control T. There's my resizing box, and I can drag this out. First, I can drag it to the bottom. Okay, and then I can extend one side at a time very easily. And there we go. That's just about a perfect match. Let's press Enter to get rid of our resizing box. And there's a beautiful triangle. All right, our next shape down the line is a square. And you'll notice I'm moving my page by using that slider again. I'm using the one on the bottom. I'm going to select a brand new color. I think this time I'll go for a blue, a light blue. And I want to create my square. So in order to create a square, I'm going to go back to my rectangle tool, because it's a form of a rectangle, of course. And then I'm going to do something a little different this time. Look at my cursor. You see it looks like a plus sign. And you'll notice that one of the corners of that plus sign, I can actually carefully line that up with the edge of the square of that outline. And by doing that, I can be very accurate for when I fill in my square. But before I fill it in, I have to press the Shift key on my keyboard I'm going to hold it down because squares, as we know, are even all around on all sides. So I'm pressing my shift key. I'm going to drag my square to the other end. There we go. And I'm going to let go. This time it didn't select the color that I wanted, so I'm going to go back to my color picker. I just double click the little icon on my, it's supposed to be my square layer. So what actually just happened, you see how it says triangle? I actually started to illustrate my square on the wrong layer. So this is a good opportunity to learn when this happens. I'm going to undo my square by pressing Control Z. And this time, I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to make sure that it's on its own layer. So if you follow my cursor to the Layers palette, we can create a brand new layer. We want to make sure that it's on its own layer so that when we move it, it's not interfering with the triangle. So if you look at the bottom, there's a little sheet of paper. It almost looks like a folded Post-it note. And I'm going to click on that little Post-it note, and it says Create New Layer, and you'll see a brand new layer pops up. Okay, my rectangle tool is selected, and I should be ready to create my square. I'm pressing down the Shift key to keep it even. And there we go. So you can see now it's on its own layer. I'm going to rename it Square. I'm going to double click on the little icon on the layer so that I could change it to the color that I previously selected. I'm going to select it from the little swatch of the color picker on the tool panel by double clicking, click OK, and we are good to go. All right, but you might have noticed that this square doesn't actually fill in the outlined square perfectly because apparently the outlined one was not exactly even on all sides. So I will also press Control T, and then I'm just going to drag down the middle just slightly, press Enter when I'm done, and that way my square is perfectly filled. It's really about creating accuracy. You want to be nice and precise with all of your shapes as best you can. I'm going to actually create a brand new layer to create my next rectangle. I'm going to choose a different color. I think this time maybe I'll do like a pinkish purple. And so for creating this rectangle, it's really a very similar process to the square. I'm going to line up my cursor with the corner of the rectangle. And the only difference is this time when I go to make my shape, I'm not going to be holding the Shift key because I don't have to worry about this being even all around. So I'm just going to click from that corner and drag and line it up with the opposite corner of my rectangle. And there we go. We have a beautiful, perfect rectangle. I don't even have to resize it because I was precise from the get-go of being in the corner and matching to the other corner. So this time when it comes to my file, I'm just going to get rid of the number 1 because I don't actually need that anymore. I just want it to say rectangle on its own. And I'm going to press Control S to save my document. You always want to save whenever you do something new while you're in a project so that you don't lose any information. If your file suddenly, crashes, something happens with the program, it glitches, you always want to make sure that all your information is up to date and you don't lose any of your work. Okay, so we already finished our first row. Can you believe it? This is exciting. Okay, so now we're going to go to our second row of shapes. We have a parallelogram. So you'll notice that right now my rectangle layer is selected. I want to continue going in order. So whenever we add a new layer, whatever layer you are currently highlighted on, if I were to press a new layer, for example, it's only going to go above the layer that's highlighted. So if you don't want it placed down here, I'm going to do Control Z because I didn't want it there. I want to continue going in order. So make sure that your top layer is selected. I press my Create New Layer icon. And I'm going to change the color for the parallelogram. I'll go with orange this time. And all right, let's see how to make a parallelogram. So we're still going to stick with the rectangle tool. And just like before with my square and my rectangle, I'm going to line up the corner of the plus sign to the parallelogram's corner. And I'm going to click and drag to the opposite corner. Okay, and let go. Now that the layer is created, I'm still going to rename it parallelogram.